Sonny Dykes is more confident in his two young offensive tackles than I am.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. Thanks for making Locked On Horned Frogs your first listen. Busy weekend of TCU sports. We'll talk about TCU baseball taking on Arizona. TCU men's tennis. They start their national title defense in the outdoor NCAA tournament championships tonight on the purple courts. We'll also get into TCU basketball targeting a big man. I told you they have to go get one. You can't stick with the big man rotation you currently have on this roster. Looks like they're at least pursuing somebody in the portal. Big man from Florida International on a visit on Thursday. But we start today with Sonny Dykes talking about the TCU offensive line. If you have paid any attention to Locked On Horned Frogs over the last few months, I have talked a lot about the TCU offensive line. Some of you, most of you, I don't know. A lot of you are probably tired of it. But I think that is the big key to this season. Aside from health, aside from TCU just being able to stay healthy, I feel like something that could derail them this year is if this O-line is not improved, particularly in run blocking. So Sonny Dykes was on 365 Sports. I shared some of that interview earlier this week when he talked about teams allegedly poaching his players, or trying to poach his players, I should say. He discussed how TCU had a really good culture, and that's what won out in those situations in the end. But he was asked, and actually my friend Paul Catalina was kind enough to say, hey, we're having Sonny on. What would you want to know? And so I said, ask him about these young tackles, Ryan Hughes and Ben Taylor Whitfield. Here was his response on that show.
Yeah, I really like those two guys. I mean, Ryan's played for us as a true freshman this year. Really came on and played well at the end of the year. He's one of those guys that I don't think any of us, when we recruited him, thought he was going to play as a true freshman. He just got better and better and better. You know, he was already he fit the bill physically. I mean, he's a huge guy. He's athletic, all the stuff. But sometimes it takes a while mentally to get there. And he just jumped right in from day one, had a lot of confidence, and got in the mix and carved out a role for himself as a true freshman. And we moved him to left tackle. He really solidified that position for us. I thought he had an outstanding spring. And then Ben Whitfield is one of those guys that's very, very talented. He's a big guy. He's athletic. His best future, his best football is in front of him. He's got a really bright future. So we're really, really happy at those two tackle positions, and we're starting to develop some depth behind those guys as well.
So I'm glad that we got that answer, because it does give you some insight. Obviously, it's a self-scout, right? It's a head coach talking about his players publicly. He's not going to be negative in that scenario. But he did mention Ryan Hughes, really from the moment he stepped on campus, surprised his coaching staff. And they had belief in him. That's why they recruited him as a high school player. But they did not foresee that he was a guy that could contribute in year one. But he kept showing up at practice. He kept making things happen. And so eventually they said, you know what? Let's give him an opportunity late in the season. They did that. He held his own pretty well. He's replacing Bless Harris. Bless Harris, not a great run blocker, but was really good in pass protection. The TCU offensive line in general last year struggled to open up lanes for the run game, but did a nice job protecting Josh Hoover. That's a huge key. Ben Taylor Whitfield on the other side, he talks about how he's played a lot of football, and they expect the best football is still in front of him. So that's their thought process. I have been adamant over the past few months that I thought they needed to go get an immediate impact player in the transfer portal at one of those tackle spots. I feel good about the interior offensive line. Even when James Brockermeyer leaving, not ideal, but Colton Deary slides over to center. Cade Bennett comes back from injury. He'll be at left guard. Carson Bruno, Remington Strickland, maybe Dylan Kinney, the transfer from ACU, but I think honestly, Bruno and Strickland are the two people battling it out for that job. Now, to the coaching staff's credit, they did not just totally sit on their hands when it comes to offensive linemen in the portal. Rasheed Jackson from Incarnate Word, who played tackle last year for the Cardinals, And then Dylan Kinney from ACU, who played tackle at ACU. Both guys had very good FCS careers. And both are similar players in that it feels like there is a lot of development that could happen. In Jackson's case, he didn't really start playing football until late in his high school career at Duncanville. So there's a lot of growth that could happen there. Dylan Kinney, he showed up at ACU, sat for a couple seasons. The one season he did play last year, he played very well. They'll get him in there in fall camp and see what he has. But I think both of those players are reserves in your two deep this year. And then the hope is next year they'll be ready to go. They are banking on Ryan Hughes and Whitfield on the outside being the guys this season. So there's some risk with that. But I've said this before. At a certain point, I do understand the coaching staff saying, you know what? We got to trust our evaluations. Honestly, this whole offseason, and we'll see the results of this experiment. It's been an ongoing process for the last few years for this coaching staff. This has been a bet on ourselves type of offseason, meaning they brought in a few immediate impact transfers. It's not totally guys that are in-house, but for the most part, the core of this team is returning players. Returning players on that they played last year, or returning players and they've been in TCU's program and have worked through the development cycle and are now ready to play. And they're banking on those players doing their job well. My concern is this. When I think about this offense, the further removed I get from last season, the more I begin to realize how good these wide receivers were last year and how effective they were in the passing game and how they really made that passing game work. Now, hear me. I think Josh Hoover's a really good quarterback. This is not me taking credit away from Josh Hoover. I think that offensive line did a good job in pass protection. That's not me taking credit away from them. I am simply saying you had a one-dimensional offense last year. That's what you had. Now, football 101, for those of us that have followed the sport for a long time, or really any length of time, we know that one of the cliches, and it's a cliche because it's true, is that you don't want to have a one-dimensional offense because it makes it easier for defenses to defend. But they survived, and I think in the second half of the season, they thrived for the most part with an elite passing attack and a run game that was an afterthought. Now, they found some creativity with the Savion Williams package, and so that's part of this too. But they were a one-dimensional offense, and they were still able to have success because of a really good QB and great wide receiver talent. QB's coming back. Receivers are not. Now, I believe in this receiving core. I think Eric McAllister's really good. He had over 700 yards last year. I believe in Jordan Dwyer making the leap from FCS to Power 4 football. I think Joseph Manjack or Ed Small or Jordan Bailey, any of those guys could emerge as a slot player. I feel like Manjack could be a solid outside wide receiver backup type if that's where he ends up landing in this receiver rotation. But my point is, you lost a couple day 2 draft picks and an undrafted free agent who had a very productive college career. I think this receiving core will be good. But even if they are just slightly worse than the group you had last season, if you still have a one-dimensional offense, how much tougher is it going to be to have consistent success if you don't have a wide receiver room that is as good and as deep as it was last year? Do you see what I'm saying? So a key here is to have a good run game, not just because it gives you a more balanced offense, but because it can hopefully offset some of the firepower you might lose in the passing game. Doesn't mean your passing game is going to be bad, but if it's slightly less than elite, you need something to compensate for that. So can you run the ball consistently, the traditional way? Can you run the ball, as Sonny Dykes said in this interview, when everybody knows you need to? When it's 4th and 1 and the entire stadium knows they're going to run, but you're going to run between the tackles. Can you do it? When you get the ball at your own 27-yard line and you're up by 4 points and there's 2:36 left on the clock and the other team has 2 timeouts, can you get a first down and win the ball game? Can you move the chain so that you can line up in the victory formation and get the heck out of there with a win? These are the questions that have to be answered. But they are rolling with those O-line as is. They're not bringing in anybody else. So Ryan Hughes, Ben Taylor Whitfield, Colton Deary, Cade Bennett, Carson Bruno, Remington Strickland. A lot of pressure on these guys to get better. Well, what about the running backs? Yes, they're important too here. Okay? I'm not going to let them get away with last season. They struggled. Cam Cook especially struggled. But again, TCU did not go out and load up on a running back. They went and got Kavorian Barnes from UTSA, who had a good career at UTSA. I think Kavorian is a change of pace back, a short yardage guy. If he turns out to be more than that, that's awesome. But I believe he's essentially replacing the role that Trey Sanders and Dominique Johnson had last year. Now, neither of those guys were super productive, but that's the role he's going to be in. Nate Palmer, Jeremy Payne, Trent Battle, John Denman. These are the guys that are going to have to step up and make things happen. Because if you can't run the ball again, can you fall back on the passing game like you did last year? It'll be tough. It's going to be tough also because you're playing a schedule that on paper will have tougher defenses and more physical defenses. Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State, Colorado, these are all teams. It's not an SEC defensive line, but they have some serious size up front that you're going to have to push around. If they believe in these young tackles, the interior O-line is set, and we're going to see in that first game against North Carolina what it looks like with a new-look team up front. When we come back, TCU Hoops has a big man on campus from Florida International. We'll break that down next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. If you work in the HVAC industry, in plumbing, you understand how vital and important it is that you have the right parts. SupplyHouse can help you out with that. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades, SupplyHouse. Whether you're in HVAC, plumbing, or electrical work, SupplyHouse is a reliable way to order products online. They have an easy-to-use website with helpful resources and the latest product info. Plus, they have a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands. Need help with an order? SupplyHouse offers expert support and industry-leading service. So you'll always talk to a real person, and for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. And again, that promo code is SH5 for 5% off your first order. Nick Garamonte, who covers TCU men's and women's basketball for Sports Illustrated, reporting that on Thursday, Vianney Salichum, a big man from Florida International, was on campus visiting TCU. Last season, Salichum, after playing a couple years of JUCO ball, he transfers over to Florida International. He had 10 points, 5 rebounds per game, shot 51% from the field, and he averaged about 23 minutes a game. So he wasn't on the court all the time, but when he was, he made an impact. I mean, 10 points in 23 minutes is pretty salty. Like, that's not just a guy who's catching the ball around the rim. So I was watching some tape. Vianney, he's an interesting player. He gets a number of, as you would expect from an athletic big man, dunks, easy lay-ins, those types of things. But it didn't always look smooth. However, he seemed to have a really good feel around the rim. I mean, he could hit a couple hook shots, like drop step and put off the glass. Explosive athlete, averaged a couple blocks per game, was an all Conference USA defensive player. From a size standpoint, he's 6'11". They need somebody to fill in that Ernest Udeh role. Ernest Udeh leaving for Miami. And I told you guys after the portal window closed in the spring, I was like, look, Malik Diallo, I hope it works out, but he can't play 35 minutes a game. So I really think this would be a very good pickup because Solachum, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily expect him to come in and play 30 minutes a night. Now, he can come in and compete with Diallo for that starting job. You don't necessarily just have to hand Diallo that gig. But at worst, or I guess like if it came down to it, this is a really good like backup option as a big man. He also hit a few threes. Now, I'll say this. The three-pointers that Vianney shot, they were like wide open threes. And the shooting motion kind of has a hitch in it. It looks a little awkward. But to his credit, I mean, he shot 44% from three-point range. So he can step out and play a little bit. He's got good size. Explosive athlete, can block shots. You got to have somebody who can allow David Punch to play at that power forward 4 position. And you can have lineups where Punch is your center. But primarily, I don't think that's where you want him to be. And Solachum would give them more the prototypical size you want at that center position, would help you not just get killed on the glass. And it looks like he can move around and play. I mean, he's athletic. Again, he scored at different levels of the offense, around the rim, stepping out and hitting some threes. It wasn't a guy who was just living on rim rolls and dunks off pick and roll action, even though that's something that I think he can do and would excel at here at TCU. But I don't know what the interest is like for Solachum. It's kind of late in the transfer process. If TCU got him on campus, though, the hope is that they can get him signed. And if they do, the Big 12 is tough. And I'm not delusional, but I'm starting to like the makeup of this team. I like that they put an emphasis on going and getting shooters this offseason. I'm happy that they seem to have, at least the priority seems to be like, let's space the floor more. Let's give Brock Harding, our new point guard, guys that he can kick the ball out to when he's able to break down the defense off the bounce. The size overall is not overwhelming, but you got a couple 6'7", 6'8" guys playing at the 3 and the 4. I mean, that's helpful. And if you have a true center rotation, then you kind of take out that obvious on paper weakness of just not being able to play, big lineups with everybody else. So to me, this would be a easy take. Like if he's interested and he wants to be there, you say, yeah, let's sign you up. Let's get this done. Again, Vianney Solachum averaged 10 points a game in 23 minutes last year at Florida International. Appears to have an ability to step out and hit jumpers. That shooting motion's a little awkward. Maybe they can fine-tune that somewhat when he gets on campus and figure out a way to get him shooting the ball a little quicker. However, I mean, he hit those shots and shot 50% from the field, 66% from the free throw line. Not great, but also kind of typical for, a big man in college basketball. I believe this would be a really good compliment to Malik Diallo and somebody who could take some of those minutes at the center position and give you an opportunity to stay competitive on the boards, stay competitive, blocking shots, rim protecting. really good fit for TCU potentially. He visited Thursday, again, according to reports. When we come back, we'll wrap up the week. I'll give you your TCU Athletic sports schedule for the weekend. That's coming up here on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. I apologize. There's some frequent listener, YouTube viewer, who mentions that I need to talk about beach volleyball, TCU beach volleyball, which is a program that has been super successful over the past few years and has hit the ground running since they started. I apologize to whoever that is for me not remembering your name. Excuse me. I think it's Matt, maybe. But I do want to mention, yes, TCU beach volleyball at 1 p.m. today. They take on 15 seed Georgia State as they start the NCAA tournament in Gulf Shores, Alabama. They are the number 2 seed. I don't know much else about. Listen, I don't know a lot about beach volleyball strategy. I've told you guys before. I'm never going to lie to you. But best of luck to them. A program that's been extremely successful. I'll be watching them. Georgia State, 1 p.m., 2 seed versus 15 seed in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And we'll see how far they can advance. A couple of years ago, I think they made the national title game. Great program. So best of luck to them as they start their postseason run. TCU men's tennis also starting their postseason tonight. They are the defending national champions on the outdoor courts. They will take on Abilene Christian. And then if they win, they'll get the winner of Oklahoma and Illinois. So good luck to David Roditi and his squad. I hope they're healthy. I hope they're ready to go. I believe if they win this regional, their super regional matchup will be UCF, which would be intriguing because they actually fell to UCF in the Big 12 tournament. But David Roditi, we love you, man. I mean, most consistent program on campus. They do an outstanding job. Ready to see what they can pull together and get done coming up over the next few weeks. TCU baseball, Arizona for a 3-game set. Again, not West Coast, but Mountain Time. So 8 p.m. first pitch on Friday, 8 p.m. first pitch on Saturday, 2 p.m. on Sunday. Really good chance for this baseball team to solidify and start to help out their hosting efforts for hosting a regional. If they can take down an Arizona team that is ranked on the road and at least win that series. Tommy Lepore on Friday night. If you haven't had a chance to watch Tommy, turn on ESPN Plus tonight because he's a treat, man. He's a competitor. He's fired up. He likes to yell and scream when he gets strikeouts. He's a fun dude to watch. He's just a guy that you can tell, like, he brings it and leaves it all out there every time he gets the ball and he goes on the bump. So Kurt Sarloos and company trying to continue that momentum from that series win against Baylor in Fort Worth last weekend. Okay, so yesterday I talked about Gary Patterson and the possibility of him returning to TCU, and I brought it up because he's going into the TCU Hall of Fame in the fall of 2025. And I thought this is the perfect time to start to kind of build that relationship back and mend those fences. Tommy Fisher said, I would love it if GP had a role with the program. I like how Sonny Dykes gave him a shout out on Twitter. I think if GP reached out, that would mean something. To me, it's in Gary's hands. Yeah, I think that's true to a certain extent. He would have to make the effort, and it goes both ways for sure. And maybe he'll be more open to that now that there's a new regime there. And I mean, the person that fired him is not there. And I'm not saying firing him was wrong. I just mean, you can be the most gracious person in the world. If you get let go by somebody, you don't want to interact with that person or see that person. That's just kind of how it is. Some other comments. Cole Rogers said, I love the PR aspect of bringing Patterson back, especially as viewership is of the utmost importance. That's cool. I don't know how long the good PR would last unless he was in an on the field role, which I don't think would happen, but I understand your thought process. And yeah, I think it'd be an awesome story, at least temporarily. Ron says you're right, but I think Sonny is afraid that Gary could retake his position. That's why I said it would have to be in a admin or fundraising role. I really believe that Gary would be good as like a scout. I even thought about GM, like that general manager role that's now popular in college football, but TCU technically has one of those guys now. And also, I'm not sure how Gary would navigate like the portal and some of those aspects. So I don't think that would totally be a good fit. I feel like he'd be great as an analyst or a scout, but yeah, Sonny's not going to want that to happen. So I think that would hold it back. Now, if he was in a part-time fundraising role, I would hope that Sonny would be comfortable with that, but you could be right. I mean, maybe he would just look at it and say, no, I don't really want that happening. We'll be back on Monday, another week of shows. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, especially those of you that did it every day. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel or find us on your favorite podcast platform. We're free and available there.